Alright, hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a bit of an announcement video. This is kind of a two-part announcement, I suppose, because I have some pretty cool announcements to come tomorrow, and this is part of that. But this is kind of its own separate entity, I suppose. But the reason why this is happening now is because of tomorrow's announcement, which I'll give a bit of info about. So basically, I've been making a mod for Company of Heroes 2 for about the past 2 months or so from now. I've been making a mod, which has been a lot of work, a lot of time and effort has gone into it. It's not finished though. It certainly has a lot more things I want to do to it, and it obviously needs a lot of balance testing. You know, it's never going to really be complete in terms of actually balancing it properly. But I think it's at a pretty good state. I think it's very, very playable. I think it's pretty fun. I've had a few games of it. And I'm keen to get it out there, you know, allow people to get their hands on it. So, the reason why I am announcing this now, despite it not being like 100% complete, is because I'm going to be running a tournament for it. And there will be info regarding that tomorrow. But I'm running a tournament for this, as well as 0 Hour and a few other things to do with... I'm fundraising to go on my trip to Canada, where I'll be shoutcasting the grand final of the Relic of Warpaint Championship alongside Stormless. Since we won't have all of our expenses covered, there'll definitely be quite a fair bit left over that I'll have to be funding myself. So I'm hoping to do some cool stuff to get people, you know, willing to help out, and rewarding people who would like to. So for a start, I mean, I'll leave that for tomorrow. That's going to be its own separate video. I need to do like a couple of things in place before I can talk about that completely in regards to like having the link set up for everything. But for now, at least, I'm going to talk about my mod for Company of Heroes 2. So, I don't know if this mod's, the name is final, but at least for now, it's the General's Gentleman Dream mod for Company of Heroes 2. I'd say that because it's my dream, Company of Heroes 2. Like, this is what I wish the game was, and if the game was this, then it'd be much better off, in my opinion. So, I have the explanation document where I've kind of explained a lot of my changes and my intentions behind making the mod, and then the actual changelog. So I'm just going to go over it. I won't like read out everything that I've written. I suppose I'll just paraphrase myself so it sounds a bit more natural. So the purpose of the mod initially, well really the purpose of it entirely, is just to remove and change the parts that I don't like about Company of Heroes 2. So that's in terms of like faction designs, in terms of the abilities, the units, a lot of things like that, which are pretty frustrating to play against. They make it very linear, very one-dimensional, and not as interesting as it could be. So what I've done is I've changed things around, given the factions more tools, more options, more versatility. As I say here, a lot of that comes at the expense of asymmetric design in terms of, you know, for example, like British now have access to flamethrowers. British now have a regular mortar rather than only the mortar pit. It's not as asymmetric, but you know, it's way more interesting, and it creates more variety, not in terms of how different the factions are, but it creates a lot more variety in terms of strategies, build orders, tactics, and you know, the matchups themselves will be a lot more interesting. So I think asymmetric design shouldn't be about removing things like, oh well, let's make it so this faction doesn't have mortars. Like that's just really boring. Or at least if they only have said unit in a very weird, gimmicky way, then that is not very fun. So some of the overarching goals behind the mod is to reduce blobbing, and that is no easy task. And there's a few reasons why I think blobbing is so prominent. And I mean, for a start, blobbing is always going to be part of Company of Heroes 2. It's just, you know, how the game is. But blobbing should be a decision. You know, should I blob, should I not blob? There should be pros and cons to blobbing and not blobbing. And currently in Code 2, there isn't really any downsides. or at least the downsides drastically outweigh. Drastically outweighed by the advantages to it. You don't really get punished for blobbing in ways that you should. So one of the big parts of that is for retreat points. I'm removing them entirely. I will link all this stuff in the video so you can read through it yourself rather than me going through everything. But for retreat points are bad because then you can blob, and if you get suppressed by an MG, it doesn't matter. I just retreat, come back 10 seconds later because my retreat point is right next to the front line. Light machine guns, LMGs, I don't like them at all because they're very simple to use. There's no nuance, there's no tactics behind them. You just attack move. You don't have to take cover. You just max range attack move. So I've replaced LMGs for the most part with alternatives, things that are actually more micro intensive and require just a little bit more nuance to use correctly. So demo charges, I mean, I've nerfed demo charges. Demo charges you would think punish blobbing, but they actually don't. And the reason why is because if there's demo traps everywhere, demo charges, then you can't send lone squads. You can't cap a fuel point because there might be a demo there and it may wipe your squad. Demos, they're more of an issue for wiping individual squads. And what that does, then it forces you to blob together with a minesweeper. It's like, well, I could cap this with a Volk squad, but no, I have to send my Volk squad and my sweeper, but then I might as well just send everything because I can't cap 2 points unless I have 2 sweepers. So yeah, with demos nerfed, I kind of changed them. I've given them AoE pinning, but they won't wipe individual squads, so you can cap more aggressively. Similar is light vehicles. Light vehicles, because of how potent they are, they prevent you from sending lone squads because the squads get wiped far too easily, especially when you're trying to cap aggressively. There's a lot of downsides that come as a result of light vehicles being so OP, like T-70s and such. Okay, another thing is the inaccessibility of support weapons from non-linear teching. So that's in terms of if I am playing US, and if I go for my captain, I can't build a machine gun, I can't build a 50 cal. So a lot of times in OKW especially is you just don't have alternatives to building lots and lots of infantry because your support weapons, your mortar, your pack howitzer, your machine gun, they're locked behind these different tiers. The sniper for Soviets, for example. So by changing teching to be linear in terms of tier 2, tier 3, but then moving around the support weapons as such, then you always have access to the tools that you need. I think, the cost, spending 240 manpower, whatever it is enough to make building a support weapon a strategic decision without arbitrarily preventing people from building one because they went the other tier. It's okay if tiers aren't expensive, but it's 40 fuel to tech up, the back tech to get 50 cal is just ridiculous. Now the grenade, this is something that I haven't actually done yet. I don't know if I really will. It's not an easy fix, but essentially grenades allow infantry to wipe support weapons. So say you have a machine gun, a 50 cal or an MG42, you just walk up to it, nade it, and it blows up. So support weapons, they don't really work as well as they could because of how easily they're wiped by nades. The recent change that lowers grenade range when suppressed definitely helped, but that's still kind of a problem. And instead, grenades aren't really a blob counter. They're more of just a nuke individual squads. So what I was thinking about doing, a very low priority, is making grenades like Company Führer's one where they have a large scatter, but much better AoE. So they're good against blobs, but not as good against individual weapons. Okay, I raise the skill cap. So basically remove or replace abilities which don't take any skill to use. For example, Blitzkrieg isn't hard to use. Panzer Tactician, you hit a button. There's nothing skillful about it. There's no decision making required. There's no nuance or precision or speed or I mean, the important thing really is you don't need foresight. You don't need preparation to do so. So in the case of Panzer Tactician, I've replaced it with the smoke canisters, the Sherman. So I've kind of tried to make abilities more skillful or just remove them if they're just bad for gameplay. Like Blitzkrieg is the worst example, right? Because Blitzkrieg, what it does is it prevents players from getting punished when they make a mistake. If you drive your Tiger in front of 3 AT guns, you know, it doesn't matter. You just pop Blitzkrieg and drive away. And it's not so much like the speed boost. I mean, especially with the Panzer IV, that has a very big speed boost, but also the received accuracy modifier. You know, it's just, if you drive in front of 3 AT guns, you should lose your tank. You shouldn't be able to pop an ability and then just drive away. Like, you need to be punished when you make mistakes, or when you get outplayed, when your opponent you know, ambushes you or flanks you or whatever. You shouldn't just be able to get out. And you should, if you have done so in a way that did require speed, precision, foresight, blah blah blah. But yeah, just panic buttons, bad for gameplay. Unit preservation, I've mentioned that regarding to light vehicles and demos and such. But also things like mortars and tank shells, like one-shotting, like to do with clumping. One of the main things in Rocket Arctic being OPOP. Ambient garrisons, in terms of spawning from ambient garrisons, like Jaegers, Fallschirm Jaegers and Partisans, just because again it requires no foresight. You don't have to plan it in advance. You just hit a button and all of a sudden a sniper that has 5% health on retreat gets wiped. You know, if you wipe a sniper on retreat, it should be because of a sick flank or a sick ambush. It shouldn't just because you hit 2 buttons and a squad of Fallschirm spawned out of nowhere. So basically I've removed spawning from houses and made those squads buffed in other areas. So increasing strategic diversity. So part of that is creating upgrades and unlocks that give you more options and make, you know, side upgrades. So you don't always rush out light vehicles ASAP. You know, you may want to upgrade your infantry in some way before doing so. Call-in vehicles are, you know, what needs to be said, right? They're just OP. Like, they're just so cost efficient because you don't have to tech up, especially combined with how strong they are individually. So I've made call-in vehicles require like teching up. Giving all factions tools and mechanics, just like flamers and mortars and such. Make all factions balanced with a fair chance at all stages of the game. So say OKW doesn't have Vet 4 and Vet 5 infantry anymore. Their late game is much weaker, but to compensate, US don't get free officers, or, you know, light vehicles aren't as OP for allies. So it's about making all factions fair and balanced. You know, regardless if it's 10 minutes or 40 minutes, you should always have the potential to win the game, regardless of what faction you're playing. Quality of life, I haven't really done much of this. Basically what I've done is resource points and victory points. You can path through them, because otherwise it would cause so many problems for vehicles. You would always juke out and it would be really quite frustrating. Of course, yeah, big thanks to Miragefly. He's been a great help for this. I've had a lot of issues getting started with the mod tools. It's very complicated, it's very confusing and time consuming. He's been there to help me out. As you'll see, in my change log I have like a tab called Things to Ask Miragefly. Yeah, how to fix Ghostwire and sandbags. I thought I fixed it, but I actually didn't fix it. I broke other stuff. So anyway, now for the fun, the juicy stuff. The actual changes. I just wanted to start off with that by explaining my decisions, because a lot of people are like, why would you remove Blitzkrieg? Why would you change snipers? Blah, blah, blah. So, general, this affects all things. As I said, call-ins, you have to tech up for them. I've also then removed the heavy tank limit so you can build multiple Tigers, which is not as OP as it sounds. All heavy tanks have been nerfed in their own ways, and the fact that you have to tech up for them, you know, it's a big investment. Infantry has been rebalanced. Okay, so this is a pretty big change. So the problem in Code 2 is you have this hierarchy of infantry. You'll have at the very top you'll have double bar Vet 3 rifles and double Bren Vet 3 Tommies. Below that you'll have Vet 5 Volks. But then I guess you have like Vet 5 elite infantry as well. But Vet 5, I'm talking about the basic infantry at least. And then below that you'll have Grenadiers, below that you have conscripts. So you kind of have this situation where in the late game, it's like Grenadiers get shot all over by riflemen, but conscripts get completely wrecked by Volks at Vet 5. It's just really unfair. There's no reason for the infantry that costs so similar to be completely dominating. And rifles and Tommies like should be the best, but not by as much as they are. Like, they're just too good, but they should still be the best. So what I've done, I've made it so bars and Brens, you can no longer double equip them via weapon racks. So if you drop a Bren, you know, you can pick it up off the ground, but that rarely happens. But you can't get 2 of them off a weapon rack. You can, however, get 1 bazooka and 1 bar. In exchange for that, Grenadiers have their LMGs exchanged with G43s, non-doctrinal, and OKW have their veterancy compressed to Vet 3. So it's the veterancy is now basically, for infantry I'm talking about, and support weapons, is the same as Wehrmacht for the most part. Like, and even the other factions, the veterancy is all pretty much the same in terms of what it actually does. So it just means that you get veterancy much quicker. You hit Vet 3 compared to Vet 5 quicker, but the bonuses aren't as good, but they're still, you know, they're balanced, they're good, they're Vet 3 compared to other squads. So it means that, you know, 1 bar rifleman versus Vet 3 Volksgrenadiers, they're pretty even. Like, it slightly favors rifles, but not by a lot. And then, you know, same conscripts aren't buffed, but everything else is kind of brought down a little bit. So it's a lot more balanced now. So this is a big thing as well. Tanks cannot damage more than 2 models per shot. So this is similar to the mines that we see in KO2 now, where if a tank hits like a clumped up squad, it'll only kill 2 models maximum. Because the problem in KO2 is you always have full health, fully vetted, fully upgraded squads just get one shot by you know, a Pershing or a Tiger or a Panzer IV, or sometimes even like a Puma. You know, like if you're just evacuated from a house and they're very clumped up in an AT gun or a Puma, just things that shouldn't be good against infantry sometimes can be. It's just too inconsistent. I mean, the RNG has its place in RTS, and I've made a video about this specifically, but there should never be a situation in which a Puma kills a squad of riflemen in 1 hit. And so doing this, it means you will never ever kill a full squad in 1 hit. However, I have given all tanks or vehicles, I suppose, 20% less scatter. So they'll be hitting much more frequently. So it's just more consistent. You know, you'll be hitting more often, but when you do, you won't be wiping the squad in 1 hit. That's the same with mortars. Well, actually not entirely, because mortars don't have less scatter, but they just have maximum model damage set to 3. So you can't wipe a whole squad in 1 hit, but the scatter is the same, where tanks actually have less scatter, which makes them more accurate. So this is a big change. It took me ages. Is Veterancy 1's been reworked. So I've removed a lot of the crappy abilities like Blitzkrieg and sprinting support weapons and stuff like that. But what I've done is I've actually taken a bonus from Vet 2, or sometimes Vet 3, and moved it to Vet 1, because it causes this big problem where you have this massive power spike of like Vet 0, Vet 1, nothing, Vet 2, okay, then you have Vet 3. And that just means that things spike way too hard in their effectiveness when they're veterancy, and it's especially a problem in the late game, where you, like, say you lose a squad and you rebuild a Vet 0 squad. It takes that Vet 0 squad far too long to actually start contributing. Like, building a squad in the late game is often just like manpower bleed and nothing else, because they just can't trade, and it takes them so long to get to a level where they are trading. So it means that late game fresh squads, they will be vetting up more consistently. It's also a big change for support weapons, like AT guns in particular, because a lot of times you'll have situations where your AT gun gets to Vet 1, gets to Vet 1.5, and then it's wiped. And then you recrew it, it's Vet 1, it's Vet 1.5, and gets recrewed, gets wiped again. So you don't have to get Vet 2 to start getting bonuses. You get a bonus at Vet 1. And I'm not going to mention what they all are, but it's pretty consistent. There's a few exceptions, but the majority of things, infantry have a better rate of fire bonus, which is cooldown, at Vet 1. Because, you know, Vet 2, it's like accuracy and cooldown, like 2 things. Where now Vet 1 is cooldown, rate of fire, Vet 2 is accuracy, then Vet 3 is received accuracy, and just generally it. Heavy machine guns have the burst duration moved from Vet 2 to Vet 1, so that's like how long they fire for. So again, HMGs, I think it was traverse, which is like how quickly it turns, and also the duration of the burst, or it was accuracy in burst. I can't remember, but either way, it was multiple bonuses, and now it's more spaced out. Mortars, cooldown reduction of Vet 1, vehicles, the turret traverse at Vet 1, so it's more gradual. I've mentioned OKW veterans. See, I haven't changed vehicles. I think vehicles are fine. I've mentioned the mortars, apart from... Okay, this isn't actually true. As of right now, I haven't... I thought I did, but I didn't, so I will have to fix that, hopefully, by the time I post this video. And oops. Post this change, I'll post the link for it. Now, this is a bit of a controversial change. Not everyone likes this, but some people do. Panzerfaust and anti-tank grenades have their damage doubled, 100 to 200, in exchange for a range reduction. So that's to make them a lot more reminiscent of the stickies from Company of Heroes 1, where it was actually really hard to land a grenade, an AT grenade, but when you do, it was very, very rewarding. And I think the problem in Code 2, with snares in particular, I mean, is the fact that landing a Faust or an AT grenade isn't skillful. Like, all you do is just walk up to it and hope your opponent either looks away for half a second or gets caught pathing on something. And it's not really... Like, whenever you land a Panzerfaust, it's never because, like, you made a good play. It's more because your opponent messed up. And that's just not really interesting. So by having less range, it means that you have to actually flank. Like, if you know, you're not going to be able to land from the front unless they get baited behind a hedge or something. But you have to flank, you have to ambush. So it actually does make landing these snares very skillful. But when you do land them, you know, there's double damage, so it's very rewarding. So I think it creates interesting plays from what I've seen, you know, your ambushing and flanking and such, which is more engaging. Light vehicles have their health buffed to 400 in exchange for a damage nerf. It's going to be a long video, by the way, so I hope you're interested. So, yeah, at 320 health, and meant that using light vehicles, again, whenever you would lose a light vehicle, it was because you looked away for half a second while microing elsewhere, or you got caught pathing on something. It's not really fun. But then, they were just too powerful. They were just wiping squads way too easily. So, yeah, that's a pretty big change. Abandon's removed, good, because abandon is awful. Prioritize vehicles only affects main gun. That's just a quality of life change, I suppose. The machine guns will still fire, even though the main gun won't. Snipers take twice as long to aim. Like, it's a big change. They take twice as long to actually hit. They don't cloak in combat either, but they're slightly cheaper. So, snipers have been very, very OP in Code 2 for a long time. They're just too much manpower bleed, too much upfront damage, which, you know, always turns infantry engagements, especially against 4-man squads, which is just ridiculous. So it means that snipers are more about, you know, like, recon certainly helps, since some of them have recon abilities, but also the impact they have is much smaller, and you can actually chase them down because they don't cloak in combat. Support weapons cannot capture points in combat. So they can capture, but when damage is taken, they automatically stop capping. I'd need to give them hold fire, because you don't always want to do that. I'll just, like, quickly... I mean, the reason why I'm doing this change is because being able to use support weapons as frontline infantry is just bad. Like, when you run your MG42 up to the enemy's cutoff, and then you're decapturing their cutoff whilst you are also defending the cutoff with the same squad. Like, you should have to cap with infantry and then use the MG for support. Like, you shouldn't be able to just use support weapons that aggressively. AT guns can't capture points anymore. Rocket arty's nerfed. I've mentioned the pathing. Demo changes, a bit less AoE. They do massive pinning though, and they won't wipe more than 3 models. So it's more about, if you get a whole blob, you still do a lot of damage, but you just won't wipe individual squads. And plus the pinning gives you more utility. Off-map arty doesn't work in the base sector, so that's pretty self-explanatory. You know, whenever you use a Stuka dive bomb or an incendiary on your opponent's base, it's very cheesy. It's pretty much always because they're mass retreating, and you arty their base, and they can't possibly dodge it because they're retreating. So it's really cheesy. You should not be able to do that. You should, you know, base sector. You know, you shouldn't be so vulnerable to those like gimmicky like off map wipes. At the same time though, base buildings have had all of their health halved to try and make like actually attacking your opponent's base more viable, because currently it's not. Like the only time you'll ever destroy your opponent's base is if you're already winning on VPs. To compensate, I've given howitzers and off map like howitzers and like other types of artillery the damage reduction, so they do the same damages as live. But it means that, you know, you can, if your opponent is like massively camping with pack 43s and such on the 2 VPs, you can just go for the base. So you can be a bit more chance to be aggressive. I think static games are boring. Okay, so that's the general changes. A long introduction, I know, but it's a very big mod, and I want to give some context. So Soviets, I mean, a lot of these are, you know, aren't that interesting, but then some of them are. So AT grenades are cheaper because the thing is with Soviets, right, is they have their AT grenades and their Molotovs separate unlocks, which is really unfair. Where everyone else, especially in the mod, your snares, your AT grenades, are unlocked on the same upgrade that also upgrades frags, or you just have Faust for free. So just made it a little bit more fair, giving AT grenades cheaper. I think I also did the same to Molotovs, didn't I? But I didn't mean... What the hell? Maybe I didn't, because Molotovs are only 15 fuel. Yeah, okay, never mind. Alright, so tank traps are no longer doctrine specific. So you can always put tank traps. It's just so weird why, like, how come rear echelon plant tank traps, but not combat engineers? It's just really inconsistent. And tank traps, they're interesting, and you should always have the chance to use them. And currently that's not the case. I've mentioned the AT grenade change. Penals, this is a pretty big change. So with penals, you can upgrade to PTRS. There's 2 packages you can upgrade PTRS twice, 50 munitions each, which isn't compatible with Flamer. And so the reason why I've done this, for 2 reasons, is so tier 1 actually has a form of anti-tank. So tier 1 is more accessible. I think Soviets now on mod are the only faction which, well, I guess to an extent, Wehrmacht are the only faction which have non-linear teching, because their teching is like a little bit different. You're not really locking behind. I guess you kind of are locking behind like support weapons, but it's different because they're so cheap. You know, it's like 10 fuel for tier 1, not like 40 fuel for the lieutenant or such. Even then, that's kind of a change which I'll mention later on. But yeah, so you can have infantry-based AT, which is important for killing or countering things like Jagdpanzers and tank destroyers. It's always been so weird why Soviets have not had any mobile infantry-based AT when everyone else has. It just makes the counter system less complete with this big gaping gap where as Soviets, like, nope. Like, how do you counter an elephant? Like, you can't, because this guns you can't flank a Jagdtiger because you know, it's an AT gun, and you can't penetrate it from the front because it has so much armor. So you have to send in like medium tanks, which can get countered by the Jagdtiger. I'm not saying the Jagdtiger is OP, but it's just there should always be hard counters to an extent. Like, I mean, Coming to Heroes overall is a game of soft counters, but there should definitely be a counter system. And Soviets not having infantry-based AT was a weird flaw. Deflection damage set to 0.8, so PTRS are pretty consistent. The damage is low. 4 PTRS, which, you know, takes up like the entire penal squad, is about, I tested, it's about 20% less DPS than 2 Shreks. So it's like less DPS but more durability as a 6-man squad. Deflection damage means that like you'll always do damage. And I think you could argue like realism, like, oh, it's because you're hitting the turret lock or something. But you know, either way, it'd be stupid, right? If PTRS just didn't work against anything bigger than a Panzer IV, like, what's the point of doing that? Damaging infantry halved for PTRS, because PTRS are actually pretty good against infantry, so that wasn't necessary to do this. And it also kind of made guards a bit OP. So penals I've nerfed because penals are really overpowered in live. They have their Vet 1 bonus removed, which, like, the more models you drop, the better they become, which is really unintuitive and punishes you for taking cover. It's a weird ability. And then also the Vet 3 accuracy has been nerfed just because it was way too strong. Because I think you get like extra accuracy vet 2 and vet 3, so it was just way too much. Guards, bit of a cost increase because LMGs have been removed / nerfed. Guards were a bit overpowered in the mod, so a bit of a change there. I've made backteching more accessible. Whenever you have either tier 1 or tier 2, the opposite is actually cheaper. I'll just kind of skim through some of the less interesting ones. Teching has increased for Soviets just because other factions now have more unlocks. Or non-linear teching, so that's kind of to balance it out. Shocks, the smoke and frag grenade now share a cooldown, and that's same with riflemen too. The problem with that, right, is you should never be able to like walk into an MG, throw a smoke, and then also through the smoke throw a frag and wipe the MG. Like, that is just so silly. If you walk into an MG's arc, you should always be punished. And now you're still not punished a lot because you pop the smoke, but then at least you can't throw the frag grenade as well, so it's still like you're getting punished for it. The reinforcement cost lower just because shocks were just not viable. The shocks just weren't very good in retail, and some people like shocks, but if you watch any competitive game, like, you just never see shocks in top 100 or whatever. Support weapons for Soviets. Crucible has been reduced from 6 to 4. Reminds me of a bug that I need to fix as well. Some recrews. Some recrews didn't work, like you would recrew them as 6 men, but by default, and also all the Soviet things are 4 men max. So it means that you can actually, as Axis, you can actually force off support weapons if you flank them. They don't just walk away. 6-man squads make them too durable, and then the crew reinforcement costs increase to compensate. So support weapons are less durable, however, they're being buffed, or at least HMGs are. Arc increased on Maxim and Dushka, so it's like a wider arc. It's easier to use them. So more potency but less durability, because it was just so cheesy where you would just spam Maxims because they were so durable, and because of how small their arc was, you'd have to overlap them to be effective. So we just made made Maxims like require spam rather than actually mixing. Removed sprint. It was a really weird ability. Again, if you flank a machine gun, it shouldn't just sprint away and set up. It should have to like hard retreat. Sniper, I have mentioned. M3, just a bit of changes to make it balanced. I've had to nerf the infantry damage because in the mod, when you have snares with less range, it's really easy to kite snares. So otherwise, it would have been a bit OP if I didn't change that, and I've made the damage more consistent by giving it more health, less armor. T70 has a massive damage reduction, half the damage, and also a cost increase, but it has a bit more health, so it doesn't get 2-shot anymore by AT guns. So it's a big nerf, yes, but necessary. T70 was, probably the most OP thing in the entire game. Like quite literally, I'm not even exaggerating. T70 was just so game breaking. It would wipe squads too easily. Quad half track, more or less the same. More health, a lot less damage. So you just have more chance to counterplay. There's more interaction. It's not just like insta-wipe squads, but then also get 2-shot. It makes it a lot more active. It's a lot more fun that way. T-34 has been penetration and rams buffed, but the MG's nerfed, so the T-34 doesn't suck so bad. 85, T-34 85, fuel cost increase because a bit too cheap. MG's nerfed. Caddy nerfed, it was too OP. IS-2, so I've nerfed the heavies a lot. So capture point is removed, I think, on all vehicles for Soviets. Armor's reduced, population cap increased, movement speed decreased. So I always found it strange that heavy tanks were basically as fast as mediums. Like if you would have an IS-2 retreating, like reverse moving, it was almost the same speed as a P4 that's trying to circle it. It was just really weird. So that's more or less consistent amongst all heavies, apart from the Tiger, which doesn't even have that much armor. It's like 200 armor or something. But those are the similar changes to expect on other heavies. I mean, Sherman, less rate of fire, but more pen at Vet 3. It was firing too fast, not penning enough. It was a weird unit. So howitzers and like Pak 43s, even all emplacements cost less manpower, more fuel. So they're a bit more accessible. Because often you would you would just not have enough manpower for them, but then you would float up heaps of fuel. It was kind of weird. KV1's got a pen buff because it sucked, and now it's on tier 4. So you can mix that in, a bit more utility. It's like a damage soak, so you can use it to absorb shots, but not deal a lot of damage like the T-3485. ISU's been buffed because it sucked. Light AT gun buffed because it sucked. Partisans can no longer spawn from ambient buildings. Squad size increased. I may also have to buff its received accuracy. I haven't really tested that out. And you can spawn as female again, because before they were like only males, and it was a shame because on launch they were like like the sniper, you would have female and male, and it was a bit more interesting. IL-2's nerfed. I don't think this is actually working. I need to fix that, but it's because KB1's are non-doctrinal now. Now tank traps, since they're non-doctrinal, they spawn barbed wire fields as defensive like doctrine commander. That's, if you remember beta, like there were fields that you would crawl through at half speed, so you would have this elaborate defense, and you'd have to, enemies would have to crawl through them. I think friendlies as well. It's quite a fun ability. And on defensive now you can build them. That's Soviets. We're like not even 1/5 done. So kind of the same with Pioneers. The tank traps non-doctrinal, and tank traps non-doctrinal, and you can build the barbed wire fields from defensive. A little bit of tiny buff there, and you can build repair bunkers. So I've done a bit of a rehaul of the repair speed. I have a lot of spreadsheets here because I had to balance out all the veterancy and such. Because when I did the rework of the OKW veterancy, I had to make sure it was all balanced. So this took me a long time to fill out, but also the repair speed as well. Basically, repairs, it was really unfair for both Soviets and for Wehrmacht. Pioneers slightly worse because they're more expensive. Like, looking at the stats, again, I'll link all this in the video description. Rear echelon combat engineers and stim pioneers were just so far ahead. So to fix this, I've nerfed rear echelon, Royal Engineers, and stim pioneers repair speed. But then I've also given pioneers repair bunkers, like from Company of Heroes 1. Combat engineers I haven't changed, but yeah, it's because they cost 170 manpower rather than 200, so they're not quite as bad for Soviets. Anyway, S-Mines I've nerfed a little bit. Grenadiers, this is kind of a big change. So the LMGs are replaced with G43s non-doctrinally, but you have to actually upgrade, or rather unlock G43s like weapon racks, but it's not actually weapon racks. It's just so weird that Wehrmacht, their grenades and their upgrades, the LMGs, didn't require any unlocks, but Allies did. It was just really inconsistent, and it also means there was less decision making. So by thinking, okay, do I rush out at Panzer IV? Do I go scout car? Do I unlock my G43s? It creates strategy and decision making, which is really fun. LMGs you can still get via commanders instead of the G43 commander unlock. LMG munitions cost increased. I'm nerfing LMGs. Rifle grenade replaced with the Model 24 stick grenade. Rifle grenades, the problem with rifle grenades is they would prevent you from multitasking. Because if you had two squads at different engagements at long range, and you couldn't afford to charge in because of whatever reason, you couldn't look away from the screen. Because of the LMGs, the rifle grenades were so punishing because they had no fuse, so they would just blow up instantly. And also, you shouldn't be able to have grenades at that long range. Grenades should be a close range thing, because then when you're up close in close quarters combat, the lethality is so high that relative to that, grenades aren't that powerful. But when you have long range engagements where things take so long to actually do any damage, and then you have a grenade that can effectively one shot a squad, it's just too good. It was not fun for gameplay. And also, it at the same time, I should really mention this in the blobbing, is grenades, because of how powerful they are, you can't really afford to multitask, because if you look away for half a second, oops, I lost my squad. So instead, what do? You just blob up all your squads together, because then you don't have to look away, and then you don't have to get hit by grenades. So yeah, that should make having multi engagements on different assets of the map more of an option, more viable. Anyway, Assault Grenades buffed, Panzer Grenades G43 buffed because they sucked, and the Smoke Grenade has replaced the Bundle Grenade. So that's like the shock grenade, shock smoke grenade. Bundle Grenade. So I don't like grenades overall for a few reasons, because grenades aren't really any micro. Again, grenades are just, I hope my opponent looks away for half a second. I love them when they're tactical in terms of cover denying, like incendiaries or molotovs, or smoke grenades in terms of flanking and such. And that's what Panzer Grenades does. It allows Panzer Grenades to flank support weapons and kind of charge up close better. They're not really supposed to charge up because they're a good long range, medium range squad, but it gives them more utility in a more interesting way. Faust has changed, I've mentioned. Sniper. Medkits have just been buffed, because medkits sucked. Okay, so the Pack 40, I've nerfed the damage on target weak point from 160 to 80 to make it more of an actual decision. Half track, more health, more cost. Flame projectors moved to tier 2 just because when it has more health, and especially when snares have less range, it'd be really OP otherwise. Scout car has, it's more of a Puma now, like a sort of in between a Puma and a regular 222 in live. Costs more, so it comes later, but it has much better anti-vehicle. So it allows Wehrmacht to counter light vehicles a bit better, but not have a unit that comes out so quickly and you just can't counter because you have no AT. So yeah, Osvin Blitzkrieg removed, has more armor, so it can actually deal with blobs of infantry better, at least, because it was really unintuitive that Osvins, which are supposed to deal with infantry, don't deal with infantry because their low armor allows bazookas and PTRS to penetrate consistently. So the Panzer IV, more far on the move accuracy, because that was actually really low. 0.5 is lowest in the game, I think, for vehicles. It's 0.6 now, which is the same as like everything else, apart from T-34s, because they suck. Like, they're supposed to suck, they're cheap. But like Shermans and Cromwells and such were way higher than the Panzer IV, more penetration as well. AoE's nerfed on the Brumba. Now Panther, this is a bit of a more interesting change. I had a word for it. Experimental change, I suppose. Controversial change. So what I've done with the Panther is, and two things. Firstly, I've buffed the moving accuracy because it sucked. You'd miss too much. But then secondly, I've made it so the Vet 2 durability bonus is now an accuracy bonus. Because the Panthers are already durable enough. They don't need to be more durable. The problem was accuracy. You know, when your Panther misses, it's really frustrating. But then it's also really frustrating when your Panther bounces like 4 shots in a row. So it gives more accuracy. That's not quite the crazy one that I was referring to. The more crazy one here is I've actually lowered the range, but I've buffed the reload considerably. So part of that is just to make it consistent with OKW, and it needed the buff anyway. But secondly, what I wanted to do, right? Because the thing is with the Panther, it was this, as I explained in the text here, it's this really weird jack of all trades tank where it doesn't actually excel at anything. It doesn't have the range to deal with tank destroyers like Jacksons and such. Doesn't have the rate of fire to deal with mediums that close in, and it doesn't have the anti-infantry either. It's just in this middle ground, and that'd be okay, but that's also what Panzer IVs are, and you know, even Tigers to an extent. Panzer IVs are the same. So when you have these 3 units, all 3 of them are like multi-purpose jack of all trades tanks, it's this kind of weird. You can't really use them dedicated. So what I wanted to do, I wanted to make the Panther more of a tank hunter, so it's really good against mediums by giving it less range, so it gets countered by tank destroyers more effectively, but it actually deals with mediums because it has a really good rate of fire now, and better accuracy, of course, too. So, and the other thing as well is the problem was, and then you would just have tank like a Jackson or SU-85 versus a Panther would be so RNG and no micro, because it was just all about like, okay, we're at max range, who's gonna miss the most, or am I gonna bounce this shot? Where now the Panther really has to close in, but when it does close in, it's more rewarded for it. So it makes the Panther have more of a distinct role, as well as it being more skillful and less RNG based in the matchups versus other tank destroyers. So I haven't tested that a lot. A lot of these changes, like, you know, need proper testing, but I think the ideas are really good, but the numbers may need tweaking. I haven't like tested a crazy amount, probably like 15 games of this I've played. Tiger nerfed, and remember, I've nerfed all of the other heavies as well. I've just nerfed the Tiger the least. The other heavies are more OP. Heavies in general are too strong. And the Tactician, you have to aim the smoke now. I've mentioned these. I've nerfed close air support. Stormtroopers buffed in exchange for call-ins. Ostrip and reserves are consistent now. You always get one LMG, but only one LMG, rather than it being a 20% chance per squad to get an LMG. The RNG was unnecessary, you know, when it comes to something you can't influence. Like, why have RNG in that? Because I've just increased to compensate. So it's consistent. It's good. So Elite Troops now has the King Tiger. I need to also change this to something for the G43 upgrade. I forgot about that. So likely it'll be changed. There'll be more things. By the time this video is posted and you're reading it, perhaps there'll be more changes that aren't in here. So I do recommend you actually look at the changelog. I've lost it now. Yeah, so the Tiger Ace was a weird unit. The problem, because it costed no fuel, so you could just spam multiple mediums and then also have a Vet 3 Tiger. Like, why? It was so weird. And then the whole manpower fuel drain thing, it was just so gimmicky and not an interesting way. So instead I've just replaced Tiger Ace with the King Tiger. It needs to be built. And it may sound OP, but I've nerfed the King Tiger a lot. So stay tuned for that. Now Lightning War, the problem with Lightning War is it just did everything. It was too good, especially in the mod. You know, it's like an infantry buff and a Tiger and strafes. Like, it meant that there was no point to go infantry specific commanders when Lightning War had, you know, the sprint. It had all these other things that were just too good. So I've removed the LMG buff, which is what it was supposed to be. The LMG unlock with counter attack, which is what mobile defense has. It's also thematic, since Lightning War is, you know, like, be aggressive. You know, a lot of the commanders don't have their themes right. And counter attack tactics allows you to cap points, so it's kind of thematic with Lightning War. I've mentioned defensive. Jaeger Infantry was a pretty bad commander. It was too munitions heavy, because every ability required munitions. So I've replaced light artillery barrage with assault grenadiers. You can get those now. And the MG42 package that we upgrade LMGs is what was replaced the G43 upgrade since the non-doctrinal. German artillery, I've changed German infantry rather. I've changed a lot because it was a very bad commander. Likewise to Jaeger Infantry, it was also a bit too munitions heavy since everything required munitions. So I've replaced Arty Officer with a new ability, Grenadier Field Defenses, which allows Grenadiers to build barbed wire, sandbags, and shoe mines like rifleman field defenses. The Arty Officer just didn't fit in with the commander because they had no artillery. You couldn't use the coordinated fire at all. Fragmentation Bomb replaced with the LMG upgrade, so German infantry like actually buffs infantry now. And Relief Infantry, which is where you get Ostrippen squads, replaced with Ostrippen Reserves, which is the like mobile defense spawns, just because again it's also too munitions heavy and it makes the command a bit more unique. Relief Infantry is a very overused ability. Many commanders have that ability for Wehrmacht. Alright, British hasn't been changed as much as the other two. Those are probably the main two. Well, I suppose the main three is US, no, sorry, OKW, Soviets, and Wehrmacht. British, weapon racks more expensive, grenades are cheaper, just because weapon racks are better, but yet they were also cheaper, didn't make any sense. Can't double equip brands. Base howitzer buffed. You can build medics now. just in case you wanted to not build Tommies. Yeah. The mobile mortar team now is available from Tier 1 for HQ, which is like the Soviet mortar team, so you don't have to build a mortar pit. You actually have a more mobile option. You're not forced into certain playstyles. Tommy squads now have AT grenades after unlocking the Mills bombs, which are clones of the Soviet AT grenades. Because British were getting countered. They couldn't really deal with light vehicles there. They were just too flimsy, not having any snares, which just didn't make any sense. I've just kind of fixed around the veterancy as well. Royal Engineers, the Vet 3's been nerfed and their repair speed was nerfed because they were way too fast, way too OP. But they have flames now as an option. Sniper, I've mentioned. Commandos are such a weird squad. They had so many cheesy bonuses from their cloak, like the sprint and the accuracy bonus, but they were too expensive, so I've just kind of evened it out. Likewise with the infiltration commandos, the Vickers. I've actually removed the garrison bonus of Vet 1 because it was way too strong. Like, you know, Vickers would just shut down entire portions of the map way too easily. The AEC, slightly more armor because it was really low. Less damage against infantry, which isn't really a big deal because the infantry kind of sucks anyway, infantry damage, but now it's just a bit more so. And I've actually buffed its rate of fire to try and make the Puma engagement less RNG, because the Puma and the AC have like the same damage, the same health, and the same rate of fire, just the Puma has more range. So now, if the AC gets close, it should win. Centaur has more mobility. Cromwell nerfed a lot. Less accurate, more fuel, and it won't be able to crush as effectively. Same with the Comet. Less accurate, can't crush as well. That's basically it. Oh, also the Vet 3 grenades are removed. My browser keeps freezing. That's kind of why I use Firefox for... I think it's because I'm recording, but for some reason, yeah, like that page on Chrome always freezes. I don't know. It's fine. We'll go to Firefox. Where was I? Comet, yeah. So AVRE nerfed, Crocodile nerfed, Valentine buffed, Sexton buffed. These aren't very interesting. Now I've changed the teching a little bit here for Brits. So, oh, actually I didn't mention AEC, or rather actually there's not in the list yet. Okay, yeah, never mind. The Bofors doesn't require the unlock, but it's been nerfed. I'll get to that later. So, Hammer unlocks both Comet and Churchill. I always didn't like it how they were mutually exclusive. And Anvil then requires Hammer, which unlocks the Aviary in Churchill, which is still requires the commanders, just because otherwise, like, Crocodile would come way too quick relative to, say, a Tiger or, say, an IS-2. The British teching is much lower. So that was to try and balance it out. I removed Heavy Engineers and War Speed because I have terrible abilities. Currently, I still have the Hammer and the Anvil buffs, like the Track Target and the Airburst Shells linked to those abilities, which I want to change, but it's been very confusing and I haven't done that yet. Brace isn't free anymore. The mortar pit's been changed a lot, and part of it is because the mobile mortar is now an option. So it requires tier 3, so it's like a late game thing, and it's been nerfed. Less health, costs fuel but less manpower, and it takes longer to vet up. But I think it also has... Oh yeah, I've made the vetting more consistent as well. So the mortar pit, it was just such a terrible unit. It was so gimmicky. It would slow the game down. It was too high risk, high reward. So by putting it on tier 3, you know, it kind of... It makes it easier to counter, but not as essential because you actually have the mobile mortar. Bofors has been nerfed a lot, but it doesn't require an unlock. So you can actually build it now, but it won't, without losing access to the AEC. But now, you know, it's not as strong. 17 pound is cheaper because it was way too expensive. Yeah, alright, so OKW. So these have been changed a lot. Haters gonna hate, but I think OKW were a very weird faction design. So they now start with Volksgrenadiers as opposed to Stern Pioneers, just because Stern Pioneers starting with a squad that expensive was just OP, and it made OKW too aggressive early game, which was never really an issue just because of how strong mid-game allies was, but mid-game allies has been nerfed, so that had to be changed as well. So Stern Pioneers no longer build Treks. They've been moved to Obers. They can now build the command bunker for 150 manpower, 60 munitions, which is like the reinforcement bunker, just because you don't get forward bases, so otherwise you wouldn't have any forward reinforce. And forward reinforce is fine so long as it's expensive and fragile. Forward reinforce, if it's extremely durable and is free because it's part of teching, that's bad for gameplay. Stun grenades removed. You can now build caches rather than salvage. That's been removed. Salvage removed, apart from thorough salvage, which gives you the regular salvage. Okay, Volks, their MP44s only take up one weapon slot, so you can pick up something off the ground. Incendiary grenades have a fuse. Now, Raketans are pack 40 now, just because the Raketan was so gimmicky. Its retreat, its cloak, its vulnerable squad that will get wiped. Its garrison, it was just, you couldn't balance a unit with so many cheesy abilities. And then you could say, well, why not keep it and then give it the stats of the pack 40? It's because it also has like elevation issues. The model itself even is caused problems, so just give it a pack 40, get over and done with. What else? Fulchums have been a lot cheaper now because they don't garrison spawn, and they require camo upgrade to cloak just because otherwise they were too cheap, as in like not requiring any munitions upgrades like obers and such. Grenades require an unlock. You can only build trucks in the base sector, so that, yeah, it's just such a weird ability to try and balance, because it would cause balance problems on a lot of maps. It was, like, how is it fair having a flat cannon that locks off a third of the map? It really slows the game down. You can't flank your opponent, you can't cut off your opponent if they have a flat cannon on their cutoff. It was just so bad for gameplay for so many reasons. Now, Obersoldaten are very different. You can build them from the battle grouper now, but they don't get their upgrades till later. So the reason why I've done this mainly is just so you can get good, like actual effective infantry-based AT, double Panzerschrecks for 120 munitions, pretty early on Obers, because with Sturmschrecks, like, you can't deal with tank destroyers with those. With double Shreks you can, late game, because tank destroyers are buffed, you need to have strong infantry-based AT to have more of a counter system. Other than that, they're a little bit cheaper, and they're being nerfed a bit just because of the fact they come earlier. It'd be really OP if they weren't nerfed. They're actually, I think, they're pretty well balanced, more or less, because they come much earlier. They have a big impact. But yeah, so the STGs replace the MG34 when they've been nerfed a little bit as well. Bundle Grenade's been removed, and Frangible is the new ability, which doesn't... Actually, I think I haven't mentioned that, have I? Oh, no, I have. Yeah, Frangible is like the normal grenade now. It doesn't slow, though, just so give more utility, but less like cheesy wipes kind of thing, like the bundle grenades. That's just a bug fix. Shoe mines don't cause heavy damage engine crit. Booby traps, more expensive, and they've been nerfed. You build them on Stern Pioneers now for an unlock. Have I even mentioned they need the unlock? Maybe I haven't. That only affects Falchions. Just to make the flag half-track more consistent, it has more health and less damage. Light vehicle nerf, Ostwind same as Wehrmacht. Jagdpanzer 4 camo removed because it was so gimmicky. Okay, now the Stuka. So the Stuka, it's cheaper, has less recharge time, but it actually scatters now. So it still fires like in a line, but each rocket scatters. So it's making the Stuka less precision nuke and more. I mean, it's more powerful in the sense that it's cheaper and it recharges quicker, but it's less precision. The problem with the Stuka, right? It was just so strong at nuking individual support weapons, especially AT guns, but it wouldn't really counter blobs because like it was so easy to dodge, and especially with how long the recharge was. So it's just to make it more consistent and put it in line more with other rocket arty. OKW vehicles are a bit cheaper, like the Panzer IV and the Panther is cheaper. But like the armored skirts for Panzer IV is actually a munitions upgrade. Panther, the same, it's cheaper, has the same changes. Oh, I haven't mentioned that. Okay, well it has the same changes as the Panther. Where is it? Pretty sure I've done this. I should double check, by the way, but I'm pretty sure I've also done this to the OKW Panther. Yeah, Panzer IV's been buffed. Jagdtiger was a weird unit. It has less armor. It's 400 is still a stupid amount of armor, but the crew no longer get dazed. So which means that like he doesn't get stunned all the bloody time. Hetzer's slightly buffed. I may buff that further though. Teching is linear. To delay light vehicles in particular. ISG slightly buffed against garrisons. Can use smoke barrage now. Can also use an incendiary barrage, which requires an unlock, but it's a bit less durable. Okay, new unit. So the problem with OKW is that they never had a dedicated anti-infantry vehicle, so they could kind of struggle with blobs. Because all you had really was the Panzer II, but that doesn't count because it's, you know, it wasn't durable. It wouldn't scale in the late game. So I've given them the snub barrel Panzer IV. If you remember Panzer Elite from Company Heroes 1, it's like the P4 they get. Essentially, it's the command Panzer IV, but it's been buffed and doesn't have the aura. So it's just an anti-infantry dedicated Panzer IV with a shorter barrel, so you can tell the difference between them. King Tiger's heavily nerfed. Stim Tiger nerfed. I mean, I want to rework this. I haven't properly done so. Okay, US. You can build assault engineers non-doctrinally, so that allows you to actually build mines and clear garrisons. I've reworked the tiers, so all the support weapons are tier 2. Tier 2 has the pack, well, apart from mortar. Tier 1 for that. Tier 2, the lieutenant, has the 50 cal, the pack howitzer, the M1. So you always have access to those tools. And then the tier 3, the captain, has all of the vehicles, which are linear to delay light vehicles a little bit. And major requires tier 3, so it's all linear. What else? So I've removed the rifleman, like the weird AT rifle grenade they have, and just given them the Soviet one, just for the sake of the animation looking nice. Because the default animation for rifleman was so weird. It was like a really weird kind of gimmicky thing. And then the frag and the smoke share a cooldown, so again you can't smoke and frag an MG. You don't get free officers now. You don't get a free major and the free captain. You have to purchase them. So a bit of a weaker mid-game for US. I didn't mention Lieutenant because it's been removed. Lieutenant removed, it's gone. The reason why is because Pathfinders are now non-doctrinal. You can always build Pathfinders. Because they're a fun unit. You know, Pathfinders, they're like long-range recon / sort of a sniper thing. Their Lieutenant overlap with the Rifleman. It was just a really uninteresting squad. Pathfinders have been changed a bit. You can't use the beacons unless you have airborne or recon, so you still get a benefit from going those commanders. Vet requirements increase, they vetted up way too quickly. A bit of a change there. The assault engineers, I don't even know if I want to go through with this because I mean, I haven't tested Assault Engineers a lot. I feel like maybe that nerf was unnecessary, but I wanted to give them better late game scaling anyway. Paratroopers, you can't use the nades when you have M19s, just because, like, I feel like long range... Wait, did I mention that on guards? I don't think I did I? Or did I? Guards... Oh yeah, it can no longer throw grenades. Yeah, whenever you have, like, LMGs and grenades aren't a good mix, because LMGs, you have such long range damage. And then grenades prevent squads from assaulting you and charging up close. So I feel like if a squad has LMGs, it should be, you know, only good at long range and shouldn't have those nades to nuke charging up squads. The exceptions are, of course, Grenadiers with the LMG doctrines and Tommies with Brens. I don't know about those. I'll probably leave with them. But like, you know, squads like Guards and Paratroopers, which are so good, bit of a nerf to them, which is, I think, justified. Alright, so Captain doesn't have the on me because that ability was awful. Supervised moved to Major just to give him more utility since he's not free anymore. Sprint was really gimmicky, but now he has more pen, so the Captain is going to be more of like a dedicated AT squad, or at least has better AT utility. But then also he can upgrade to double bazookas for munitions without needing the weapon racks. So if you want to get Zooks without having to spend the fuel on weapon racks, you can build captains. You can build multiple captains as an option. Just, you know, it's kind of unintuitive because it's a captain. So I was thinking about like changing the name to Tank Hunter Squad or whatever, but that would be stupid because there's so many voice lines that say captain, so it'd be confusing. So it's one of those classic, you know, gameplay greater than realism things, whatever. Major Cap's faster now, give him more utility. The US mod has been nerfed. Crit Repair no longer exists because that's a terrible ability. Thompson, non-doctrinal for vehicle crews. So yes, AA half-track and Stewart nerf. A bit more health on the AA half-track. Shell Shock nerfed because it was too strong. Okay, the Howitzer Carriage it's a lot more range. Has a lot more range now, but much weaker stats. The reason why is because the M8 was weird. It overlapped with the Sherman too much, which was really good against infantry. But then the other problem with the Howitzer Carriage is it didn't really have the range to safely poke away at like packs, because you know it's 60 range. It had the same range as an AT gun. You had more with the ability, but with the barrage ability, but it was such a weird unit because it wasn't artillery. You know, it was just a cheap infantry wiper. Like now it actually is a proper artillery unit, but it's, you know, it's weaker. When it dies easier and it has less like AOE and rate of fire, but you know, it can safely sit away and poke. M10 can't crush as easily. Jackson, health increase, it would die away too easily. Calliope nerfed, Pershing nerfed. Infantry Company now has ranges rather than weapon racks. M19 weapon racks replaced with withdraw and refit. Airborne's power drops have been buffed, and yeah, that's it. Whew. So this is some things that I want to work on for now. I still have a lot of commanders to fix. There's a few commanders that have been gimped out by the changes in the mod, which I need to fix. So yes, it's an ongoing thing. I mean, I've done most of it though, but I want to get this out there, spread the word, get people to play it and such. So what I'll be doing is in this document there'll be a link, like, you know, download the mod. It's not on the workshop at the moment, but I can just put a link to Dropbox, or I can put it on the workshop by the time this is active. Also, I will make a feedback form kind of thing, just so you can leave your feedback in a Google form where it's all in one place and I don't have to go back and forth to find it. I can refer to the feedback quite easily. And yeah, I'll be doing a tournament. The date is Sunday Sunday the 25th at like 3 p.m. GMT. And yeah, so you should practice the mod, you should play some games. What I'm going to do as well, I actually should have had this before the video started. I'm going to make a Discord as well. Like, yeah, again, I was kind of rushing this out a little bit because I want to... My trip to Canada is in like 3 weeks, so I need to get this like done and get it out there before then. So I'll make a Discord as well, like as a community group where people can play games with each other and have a chat about stuff. So yeah, if you want to play the mod, I hope you certainly give it a go. If you've managed to sit through this long video, but yeah, go join the Discord group, play some games, send me your replays for like casting. The thing is though, is I'm going to be changing this very frequently. Like pretty much every day I'm going to be working on this. So this like download page is probably going to update all the time, so just bear that in mind. You may have the old version if you try to play with someone, and then I think if it's on workshop, it updates automatically, so I may just do that. But yeah, all the information will be in this page here, and then I'll leave some relevant links in the description. So that's all you need to know. Community Discord. Yeah, whatever it is. Yeah, so thanks for watching. It's been really fun making the mod. Honestly, I've been enjoying making this. It's very addictive, like having this vision and going towards it and wanting to improve the game. I think, like for me, the dream would be to get into RTS design or balance design or something like that. And making mods is a good entry to do that. It's part of the reason why I wanted to do this. And just, because it's fun. I've been enjoying it. So, yeah, a big thanks to, I guess, our Patreon backers, because, it's been a big time commitment, and I've done a lot of work on this over a short amount of time, as well as still, posting a video every day to the channel, and that's only possible because of our Patreon backers that keep the dream alive. So, shout out to you guys. And, yeah. That's all for now. I will be mentioning a lot more tomorrow about, again, the tournament and the trip and such. But this is just to get the info out there. You can have a game if you so desire. Yeah, and if you do want to support the channel, support the mod, support me in my ambition to be an RTS professor working on RTS games and such like that, then do consider a backing on Patreon. It's all in the description. And yeah, any help would be greatly appreciated. So I'll wrap that up here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you around.